remember it still, as though it were yesterday. A boy going barefoot in May, so dear to my heart.
It all happened back when I was just a barefoot country boy, living on a little farm in Indiana with my Granny Kincaid. Granny was a wonderful woman, and she was all the mother and father I ever knew. Between raising a growing boy and running the farm single-handed, Granny never knew an idle moment, and she saw to it that I didn't either. Mostly chores, of course, but on occasion, Granny would let me go into Fulton Corners on an errand. And that's where I was bound on a certain bright spring morning when all this began. I ran all the way so I'd get there in time to watch old train number 99 come a-chugging through the village on her way to Louisville. Always kept hoping someday I'd see it stop. And then, it happened. Old 99 was whistling for a stop. Everybody dropped what they were doing and headed for the depot. Right behind the passenger coach was hooked a special car. It was painted bright yellow, and on the side I read in big red letters,
Dan Patch. Why, he's the greatest racehorse in the world.
The great Dan Patch himself, right in Fulton Corners. And they'd stopped the Limited just so that he could get some exercise.
Take a good look at that horse, Jerry Kincaid. He's going to win $1 million before he's through. Yeah, he's a champion, all right.
$1 million? I didn't know there was that much cash money in the whole world. Then his trainer said to me,
Yeah, Dan Patch wants that apple you're eating, kid.
All right, he can have it.
They're wormy, is it? Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's all right. Go ahead, you can give it to him.
Gee.
I can still feel the touch of his soft black nose and his warm breath on my hand. And it was right at that moment that my boyhood ambition was born.
What?
Someday I was going to own a champion. And someday the train would stop again at Fulton Corners, and I'd step proudly off with my champion, and everybody would cheer.
Oh, get out the way for old Dan Patch. Dee-diddle-die-diddle, old Dan Patch. Get out the way for old Dan Patch. Get out the way. Oh, get out the way.
Yes, sir. Somehow I had to get me a champion racehorse. But the only animals on Granny's farm were an old mule and some sheep, and some little old lambs that weren't even born yet. Well, that night, I was in bed. I had my scrapbook open, and I was pasting in a cutout picture of that wonderful Dan Patch racehorse and wondering how I could get me a colt, when Granny came back in the house and called upstairs.
Jeremiah! The lambs are being born. Put on your boots and come on out the barn. Quick now.
When we got out to the barn, Granny let me hold the lantern and we looked in the sheep pens. There was woolly old Jezebel, and lying on the straw beside her was her white baby lamb, nursing away hearty and healthy. But suddenly I heard a sound from over in the far corner of the pen. Something seemed to be moving in the shadows over there. It was another baby lamb, and he wasn't white like lambs are supposed to be. He was black all over. I went into the pen and picked him up in my arms.
Granny, look. Jezebel's got twins. Gee, ain't he a beauty?
Black as a lump of coal.
You hungry, little fella? Hold still, Jezebel. This little fella's hungry, too.
But that stubborn mother sheep just butted her little black baby away. And I said,
What's the matter with her? She crazy?
Oh, sometimes they're like that with twins, especially when one of them's black.
Let me take care of him, Granny. I'd feed him and take care of him and everything, Granny.
Oh, he'd grow up to be underfoot and... oh, well, I know the nature of these black sheep.
Look at his face, Granny. Hasn't he got a cute little face?
Wicked little face, if you ask me.
You gonna let me keep him?
Well, we'll see.
So Granny softened up, as she most always did. And I traded in my dream of a champion racehorse for a no-count little old black lamb. But I had a funny feeling that something good was going to come of it. That little black lamb had happened along just at that particular time for a reason. And that's the way it turned out.
Oh, Jerry had a little lamb, Baba black sheep. Yes, ma'am, get out the way for Jerry's lamb. Get out the way.
Remember that scrapbook I was telling you about? Well, one night, the most amazing thing happened. I was pasting in a picture of Danny. That's what I'd named my little black lamb. When I happened to look over on the opposite page, where there was a picture of a wise old owl. And, well, you can believe this or not, but right while I looked at that old owl, he seemed to come to life. He flapped his wings and stood right up on the page. And he said to me,
Hey, you look kind of sad, young feller. What's the matter, hmm? Well, I know. You're still fretting about not having a colt that you can raise up to be a champion. Well, you got a lamb, haven't you? You ever think of that? Yeah, you better just listen to the wise old owl.
and that owl flapped his wings and blinked his eyes, and here's exactly what he told me.
It's what you do with what you got, never mind how much you got. It's what you do with what you got that pays off in the end. You gotta add how much you do, then multiply by what you do. You think you can't win, but you do, and you get that dividend. It's the means you apply that raises your stock. Look what David did to Goliath with the little old hunk of rock. It's what you do with what you got, never mind how much you got. It's what you do with what you got that pays off in the end.
Well, if what you've got is just a little black lamb, what do you do to make him into a champion? Next day, when Granny sent me into Fulton Corners on an errand, I took Danny along on a rope. And we stopped in at the blacksmith shop to see Uncle Hiram.
Yeah, get out the way for old Dan Patch. Get out the way for old Dan Patch.
Uncle Hiram,
Oh, Jerry? Oh, what's on your mind, son?
horses get to be champions by winning races. What about things that don't race?
You mean like sheep? Well, sheep you take to the county fair and enter 'em in the judging contest. Of course, it would mean a lot of work for you, special feeding and the best of care, but say, do you think your granny would take you to the fair?
Well, that was the big question. But Uncle Hiram promised to come out to the farm that night and see if he couldn't persuade Granny to say yes.
Lavender blue, dilly dilly, lavender green. If I were king, dilly dilly, I'd need a queen.
After supper that night, Uncle Hiram was sitting by the fireplace out at the farm, singing Granny's favorite song. Granny was rocking in her chair, and she was smiling. So it looked like a good time to ask her if she'd take us to the county fair.
Please take us, Granny. when Danny wins the blue ribbon and the cash award, and when we get off the train at Fulton Township, everybody'll be there.
But then Granny's face clouded up, and she said,
No, Jeremiah, we can't go. It'd cost a lot of money. The Kincaids never spend money they ain't got, and we've got no way to get it. So it's just best to forget the whole thing.
I went upstairs to bed that night, feeling pretty low. There just wasn't any way to get all that money. And then I looked over to the scrapbook, and that wise old owl seemed to stand right up on his page again. He shook his wings hard like he was scolding me, and here's what he told me this time.
Now, where there's a will, there's a way to do it. But you'll never get there if you don't stick to it. Now, let me tell you about a feller who had the right stuff and wouldn't give up even when the going got rough. Now, Christopher Columbus, living in Spain, showed capacity for using his brain, studied his geography and had it down pat. Said, I'm gonna prove that the world ain't flat. Because he thought he was right, Queen Isabella one night gave him 3 small boats. 1, 2, 3, boats were kind of leaky, he started to sail. Came a hurricane, a furious gale. Sailors started yelling, Chris, turn back on that eventful day. What did Columbus say? Why, he said, stick to it till the T. If you got that stuff called, stick to it till the T. You're gonna do all right. Old man adversity. He's gonna have his bluff called, stick to it till the T. Never lost a fight, yes sirree.
Yes, sirree, that old owl was right again. I'd stick to it, and somehow I'd earn that money for the county fair.
By applying, stick to it till the T. If you got that stuff called, stick to it till the T. You're gonna do all right. You're gonna do all right.
Well, I stuck to it all right. But pretty soon it was only a week to fair time, and I'd only earned $2.14. That wasn't near enough. I had to make a real killing somehow. Then one day, Tildy was the little girl on the next farm, and she was helping me. We were in Mr. Grundy's general store. Somebody came in to buy some wild honey, and Mr. Grundy didn't have any. And he said to me,
Now, there's an idea for you, Jeremiah boy. You want to get rich quick? Well, just go out and find yourself a wild bee tree. Pay you 10 cents a pound for the honey.
And Tildy said,
How do you find a wild bee tree, Mr. Grundy?
Well, that's easy as pie, Tildy girl. Well, you just go down there, you take the, you just find a bee and follow him home.
Find a bee and follow him home. We didn't know that Mr. Grundy was only joking. And it was lucky we didn't, because we did exactly what he said. And a couple of days later, way down in the dark swamp, we found the bee tree. The hollow trunk was stuffed full of wild honey. And next day, when Uncle Hiram drove me home from the store, he sang,
Jerry Kincaid followed a bee till he come to a cottonwood tree, sawed that tree off to the ground. 2 tubs of honey was what he found. That load of honey got the money for the fair. Jerry Kincaid's a millionaire. The storeman paid 10 cents a pound. Wait till Granny sees the money Jerry found.
I could hardly wait to see Granny's face when I showed her all that money. But when we drove up to the barn, Granny ran out to the wagon crying,
Have you seen Tildy?
You know how much money I got here, Granny?
My land, not now. I'm trying to tell you that Tildy's lost. She brought a load of clover up here to feed that fool lamb, and when she opened the gate, it bolted for the deep woods.
What business she have opening that gate? What'd you let her do it for?
Jeremiah,
Which way Danny go?
Well, down by Indian Creek. But they ain't there now. I've searched every inch of it. Come back here, Jeremiah. Oh, drat that boy. All he cares about is that fool lamb.
Danny was lost in the swamp. And the fair was the day after tomorrow. I had to find him. I had to. Most of that night, I stumbled through the swamp, searching and calling. Well, if only I could see something. But it was pitch dark in the swamp, and the rain was beating in my eyes and blinding me. I was almost frantic. The dogs were abroad in the swamp. The wild dogs that the farmers call the sheep killers. I had to find Danny before they got him and killed my dream. My blue ribbon and the cash award. If only I could see something. And then, I don't know what time it was, but long after midnight probably, I saw a light bobbing in the distance. It came closer. I ran, stumbling toward it. It was Granny.
Jeremiah! Oh, Granny, I gotta find him. I just gotta find him.
Lamb's sakes, boy. Why, you're just soaked to the bone.
I heard the dog.
Come along home. You can't find Danny at night in this here storm. Come
But
along
Granny!
now.
So, Granny took me home and put me to bed. The wind and the rain were still howling against the windows. It just didn't seem right that after all my work, after even getting the money for the fair, at the last moment my chance to own a champion was being snatched right out of my hands. Granny heard me crying and came into the bedroom to comfort me.
Now. Maybe Danny found a holler log and crawled into it where the dogs can't find him. However it is, it's beyond our earthly power to help.
He ain't dead. He ain't dead.
I didn't say he was. I'm only trying to tell you to remember that the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away.
Well, he can't have him. He can't take Danny.
You're not telling the Lord what he can do or can't do. The Lord will do the telling.
I just turned my face away. I wouldn't listen.
No, Jeremiah, you can't do this. You started out by loving the lamb. That's why I let you keep him. But you don't love that lamb anymore. What you love is blue ribbons and cash awards. You ain't thinking of that lamb. You're just thinking about yourself. I'm going to leave you alone now, Jeremiah. You know what's right, but you'll have to find it in your own heart to do what's right.
I lay awake all that night, thinking and praying. Next morning, soon as it was light, I was up and dressed and out in the woods to hunt for Danny. The storm was over, and now I could see. And sure enough, I found him, right where Granny said he'd be, all snuggled up in a hollow log. Gosh, he was glad to see me. I led him back to the farm, wondering how to tell Granny something very important I'd decided. Granny heard us come in and walked over to where I was combing out Danny's wool.
Well, he don't look none the worse for wear.
Granny, about the county fair. Danny and I aren't going.
What made you change your mind?
Well, last night, I promised God if he'd let me find Danny, I wouldn't take him to the fair. And he did.
Well, well, now, if this ain't a fine howdy-do, it happened that, I made a promise, too. I I promised God that if he did let you find him, that we would go to the fair. And since I've known him longer than you have, I reckon it'll be all right with him if I keep my promise. Forgive me, Lord. I meant to tell you afore. Had it in the back of my mind all the time.
And there we were, at the county fair.
Hody-I, hody-ay, what a great big wonderful day. Not a care in the air. Everybody you know from Matilda to Joe will be there at the county fair.
Your attention, please. All contestants in the Pike County Agriculture and Livestock Fair. Judging for the champion Ram Lamb will now take place in this arena.
Is that us, Granny?
I reckon it is.
Hey, you comb that black lamb till he shines, Granny. He'll win the blue ribbon sure, won't he, Jerry boy?
He will win. I just know he will.
Hope he does, but happen he don't, Jeremiah. I want you to come out of that ring like a Kincaid. Walk in proud.
Last call for the lamb judging. All contestants report to the ring. Your attention, please. The judging for the champion Ram Lamb of the Pike County Fair is now taking place in the main arena.
As I stood up there in the ring beside Danny, in a line with the other contestants, I was so scared my knees knocked together. Hundreds of people were watching us. The judge inspected the lambs one by one, and then he went over to one side and talked with the committee. Once he looked back over his shoulder at Danny and me, and Danny went... At last, the judge came back to the platform and held up his hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the champion Ram Lamb, your judging committee has awarded the blue ribbon to Mr. Marshall.
Well, I'd lost. I wished the earth would crack open and swallow me up. But somehow I felt more sorry for Danny than myself.
It's all right, Danny. It's all right, boy.
And then I saw Granny looking up at me from the crowd, so brave and stern. And I remembered what she'd said.
I want you to come out of that ring like a Kincaid. Walk in proud.
And that's what I did. I took in a deep breath and squared my shoulders, and
Just a moment, son. What's your hurry?
the judge was calling me back to the ring. Had I done something wrong?
That's quite a lamb you have there, son. The only trouble is, it's black. Kind of put your lamb in a class by himself. I'm not trying to be funny, folks. This lamb is in a class by himself. It's what you do with what you got that counts. This little lamb is a champion in every sense of the word. Therefore, it is the unanimous decision of your judging committee that there be awarded the breeder a special prize. A special blue ribbon for merit to Jeremiah Kincaid. Congratulations, Mr. Kincaid.
Get out the way for Jerry's lamb. Die-diddy-do, diddy Jerry's lamb. Get out the way for Jerry's lamb. Get out the
Well,
way.
that's exactly the way it happened. I'll never forget the homecoming. Getting off the train at Fulton Corners and leading my champion as all the folks cheered. And though the blue ribbon is faded now, it still shines bright in my memory. As long as I live, it will be so dear.